Okay, so we're on 9.3. Let's look at number 3. Sam has 30 nickels. Has 30 nickels and dimes worth $2.40. And they want to know how many nickels does he have. Okay. In real life, you count the nickels, right? So you see what I'm saying? I understand the whole watermelon meme. Now, one thing that might have made you appreciate these, I know that I see here we go. All right. So he's got some nickels and he's got some dimes. There's two things going on here. First of all, didn't they tell me two things? Didn't they tell me the total number of coins he has? And that is what? 30. We know he's got 30 coins. And we know he's got nickels and he's got dimes. But they also gave me another big idea here, and it's how much money he has, right? So how much money is another thing we know. He has $2.40. Okay. So I kind of got two ideas to work with here, and I'm going to have to pay attention to each separate idea, one thing at a time. So let's first start with coins. Why don't I do this? I know he's got nickels and dimes, and then what they want to know is how many nickels he has, but honestly, who knows what's going to be easiest to solve for? I may end up finding dimes first and then having to go back and find the nickels from that information. I know that I want to count them, so let's do this. Let's let N be the number of nickels. I always want to spell nickels like pickles, and it's not right, is it? Okay. And D is the number of dimes. If he's got 30 coins at all, and he's got some nickels and dimes, if you had some money in your hand and you were going to count up how many coins you had, and you had them separated into a pile of nickels and a pile of dimes, how would you add that up?
Count the nickels.
Count the nickels, count the dimes, right?
Yeah.
So when you take the number of nickels and the number of dimes and add them together and say, oh, I got 30, right? So that equation ends up just looking like this. The number of nickels plus the number of dimes is 30. There's one equation to work with. One thing I can kind of see about this equation and notice is, we just did the unit on substitution. Wouldn't it be really easy here to solve for an N or a D so I could use substitution?
Yes.
So that's probably, this unit the word problems are coming right after we just talked about substitution, so that's probably what's going to happen here. That's why they're giving me these problems right now instead of at the end of the chapter. All right, now he's got some money. If you had a pile of nickels and you had a pile of dimes, wouldn't you count your nickels? And to find out how much they were worth, what would you do? Multiply them by 5 cents, right? So if I want to say how much in nickels, couldn't I say that it's how much money in nickels plus how much money in dimes? If you think about this, you can kind of figure out what you do in real life. And when you add it all up, it's going to add up to $2.40, right? Okay, so if he's got N nickels and they're worth 5 cents a piece, and you multiply 5 cents times N, wouldn't that be 5 cents times N? 0.05 N, right? What would your dimes look like?
0.1.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and put 10 here, even though I might actually put 0.1 on my paper, just so it's 10 cents times the number of dimes. Sometimes if I put 0.1 there, people kind of lose me. Well, what'd you do there? Well, it's 10 cents, and you can write it as 0.1 if you want to, right? Okay. And when I add them up, they equal 240. I have two equations and two unknowns. My unknowns are N and D. They want to know the number of nickels. Okay. So I got to solve this now. The setup part is what the word problem part is, right? And then now we're back to where we were, like on last night's homework, except these equations look a little grosser because they've got some decimals in it. Can I get rid of decimals? How do I do it? You just do it. What do you do?
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
That's right. Capitalize on your dreams. Fulfill them. How would you fulfill your dreams of getting rid of decimals here? Multiply by, okay, if I take this equation right here, the 0.05 N plus 0.10 D, if I look, I've got two decimal places. I can multiply every single term by 100 and get rid of the decimals, and all that really does is just scoot everything over 2 places. So doesn't that become 5N plus 10D is 240? So if you do it, just don't forget to do it to every single thing. So I have two equations, two unknowns. Which one do you think? If I want to know the number of nickels, you would think you would solve for n, right? If you got n plus d is 30, you want to know the number of nickels. You might think you'd want to solve for n, and you could do that. But when you do that, doesn't that put all your variables in terms of d's? So really, if I want to have an n in my equation, I need to get rid of the d, don't I? You can do it either way. If you do it the way I'm fixing to do it, you won't have to go back and do another step. So let me do this. Let me get rid of the d's because I want n's in my equation. So what I'm going to do to get rid of the d's, I'm going to get the n to the other side by subtracting it. And so d is equal to 30 minus n. Okay, so I want the n's to stay in. So let me do this. Let me I'm using this equation, n plus d is 30. I solved it for d. That's what I'm going to plug into the other equation. So let me go to the other equation. 5n plus 10d, but instead of d, I'm going to put in 30 minus n. And that's equal to 240. Okay, let's start going through it together. If you haven't finished, you can just kind of follow and make sure that what you did do so far is so good, right? All right, so I would have 5n, and then I would say 10 times 30 is 300, and positive 10 times a negative n would be a minus 10n, and that's equal to 240. Now, I got to solve, but first, before I solve, I want to simplify each side, right? I don't want to be moving a bunch of terms around. On the left-hand side, couldn't I say 5n minus 10n is a negative 5n? So I have negative 5n plus 300 is 240. But I want to get n by itself, don't I? So remember when we do solving, we do PEMDAS backwards, so I would add or subtract anything first. I've got a plus 300. I can definitely subtract that. That's a minus 300 from both sides. Okay, I'm going to come over here because I'm out of space. That minus 300 would cancel out. I have minus 5n, and then 240 minus 300 on the right-hand side. What's that going to be? Negative 60. I want to get n by itself, so I will divide both sides by what? Yeah, if you circle that n, that keeps you focused on the correct side. I'm trying to get rid of the negative 5. Opposite of multiplying by negative 5 is dividing by negative 5. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 60 divided by 5 is 12. I have 12 nickels. And that's all they asked me. What if they wanted to know how many dimes he had? Yeah, you'd go plug it back in. You could say, oh, well, you could just say, oh, well, in the problem he had 30 stuff. He had 30 of the coins, so 30 minus 12 is 18 dimes. But if it were a little more complicated, you'd go back up here and say, oh, plug it in back up here to find the D. 30 minus 12 is 18 dimes. Okay? So this time, did they tell me how many total coins he has? They didn't give me a number, did they? So that's going to mess that up. So this is a little bit different than the previous problem. They did tell me how much money he has. So he's got some dimes and he's got some quarters. Let's imagine that we take this imaginary money and we have a pile of dimes and we have a pile of quarters, right? Let's let D be how many dimes we have since we don't know that. Let's put number dimes. And let's let Q equal the number of quarters we have. Because we know they want to know in the end how many quarters, and so we know if we got to have a Q, we got to have a D, right? Because we got two different things going on. Now, if I added up the amount of dimes he has and the amount of quarters he has, I don't know a total, so I can't get an equation that way. But let's focus on the money part, because that at least is similar to what we did in the last problem. Let's say you're going to count your money. You go to count your pile of dimes. You got D dimes, however many they are. How are you going to know how much they're worth? How much is each?
0.25.
Yeah. Well, for the dimes, 0.10, right? Okay. So dimes would be, if I'm talking about how much money, what the money is worth, or the value of the money, I should have put that, but anyway. Worth of money does not make sense. Value of money. It would be 10 cents times however many dimes I have, and now we got to add in our quarters, right? How could I express the amount that the quarters are worth?
D plus 8.
Well, I'm going to do that in a minute, but right now I'm just thinking, how much are the quarters worth? I'm trying to work on that. They're worth 25 cents, right? So wouldn't it be 25 cents times Q? So wouldn't it look like 0.25 Q? When you count your money up, how much does it add up to? 550. See how that's coming out of the problem. So each thing they give us in the problem, each number is usually a separate equation going on. So I knew that 550 was going to be something in one equation, and I'm pretty sure that 8 is going to be something in a different equation that we need to look at. Now this kind of thing, we got the worth down. Let's go ahead and get rid of these decimals because we know we're going to want to do that in a minute anyway. And we kind of see the decimals and we're kind of like, oh great, decimals. So what can I do to get rid of those decimals? Multiply everything by 100 or move everything over 2 spaces, right? That's how we get rid of decimals in a problem. So that would be 10D plus 25Q is equal to what? 550, okay? Okay, so in a minute, I know I'm probably going to have to use this equation, and the way it's been going in this section, I'm pretty sure this is where I'm going to stick stuff into, right? And the other thing I get is where I'm going to get the information to stick into this one. I got 8 more quarters than dimes. Okay, so I don't know if you remember this or not, and those of you who weren't in my class last year, I'm not sure if we've talked much about this year. I have a feeling we probably mentioned it at least once. This is like, I could say he's got 8 more quarters than dimes. Y'all remember that than is kind of a switching word. If I've got 8 more of something than you, don't I take what you have and add 8 to it? Okay, if I had 8 less than you, wouldn't I take what you had and subtract 8, right? So, then is kind of a switching word. A lot of people want to put 8 minus x or 8 plus x, but really it's something plus 8 or something minus 8. When you see more than or less than, it kind of switches the order of the information. When you read it, you kind of think 8's going to go first, but it's really usually goes second. Here it's not going to matter so much, but I just want to point it out because this has been something that we'd had trouble with if it had said 8 less than somebody else, okay? So what I'm going to do is when I count how many quarters he's got got 8 more than, so how many dimes he has, he's got 8 more quarters than dimes. This than is a switching word, but another thing about the than that I'm getting ready to do that I just want to make sure I've mentioned to y'all, because not all of you were in my class last year, and I'm not sure how Miss Bailey taught this. When you see the word than, usually what comes after it is going to be your variable. So how many quarters does he have? He has D plus 8. He's got 8 more quarters than he's got dimes. So if you take the number of dimes and you count them up and you add 8, isn't that how many quarters he has? To me, that was always hard to get down in a problem. For some reason, that just confused my mind, and I had to kind of talk myself through it and make sure I was doing it right. I don't know if any of you feel that way, but I know I always did. So the number of quarters is the number of dimes plus 8, and they're asking me for quarters. If I use, I'm going to do something maybe not the most efficient way here, just to show you kind of what happens, because I know a lot of people will do this. Q is by itself, isn't it? What if I plug it in? The problem is they want to know how many quarters he's got, and if I get rid of my Q, I'm going to get my answer in dimes. But I'm going to go ahead and do it just because a lot of you would accidentally do it, and it's not that it's wrong. When we get done, we're going to have our answer is going to be D equals something. We're going to have to go plug it in to find quarters, okay? So I just want to do it just because a lot of people just accidentally do this way anyway. So if Q is D plus 8, here's Q. I'm going to leave my D's in. I'm going to take my Q out, and in its place, I'm going to put D plus 8. And that's equal to 550. Okay, let's go through the math on this one just quickly so I can get this all in the video. That would be 10D plus 25D, and then 25 times 8 is what, 200? Is equal to 550. And let's see, if you add 10D and 25D up, aren't you going to get 35D? Okay, so 35D plus 200 is 550. And let's see, if I want to get D by itself, all right, so to get D by itself, just trying to quickly work this before we run out of video, I'll subtract 200 from both sides. 550 minus 200 over here, isn't that going to be 350? Okay, and I got 35D is 350. If I want to find D, don't I divide both sides by 35? All right, to get D by itself. And 350 divided by 35, hey, that's 10. I got 10 dimes, but that's not what they asked. They wanted to know how many quarters. So the number of quarters would be D plus 8. So it would be 10 plus 8 would be